Hello, my name is Roberto Rivera, and I'm here to talk about my Warfare map known as Sky Outpost and how it came to be. Before we get started, I would like to talk about the process of creation. I have a 9-step process. First, I schedule and make sure that I know my deadline. I usually use Scrum to do this. I found that that Scrum is really good for keeping a good deadline. The second step to my process is design, uh, the conceptual phase where I determine what's the X line, what's the thing that I'm going to catch people's attention with, and what am I going to offer them. I usually like to think of this as like a thesis, where it's this overarching idea that's going to combine all of the elements together, whether it's uh, level flow, modeling, artwork, color, lighting, all of these things combined together to create a unique package that the players will be able to understand on every level and appreciate. After creating the design thesis, the concept of the level, I immediately jump into Photoshop and I try and conceptually break down the entire level first before rendering it into full 3D. I draw things from a top-down map, side view if necessary, but what's really important is me breaking down how the level's going to look from top down, how who's going to be where the uh, player start's going to be, where are the weapons, where are the important elements, and a lot of times I like to try and predict where the most attention to detail is going to be, where are the players going to be, where they're going to want to be, and where the flow and what the flow of the level should be um, to support my idea. And a lot of times I'll do that through a heat map. I try and predict these things ahead of time to see if my predictions are true. From there, I jump into the block test. I like to do this for several reasons. I like to break down exactly the scale, the size, oftentimes the lighting of the level. I like to break down how it's going to look and eventually get some player feedback. This is where I usually just concentrate solely on the aesthetics and the flow. From there, I open up 3ds Max. I begin to organize things. I usually start off with creating a scale of the Unreal Tournament units, where every 16 units is about a foot. So I try and create this scale so that way everything that I create will be appropriate, it'll be according to scale, and I don't have to modify it as soon as it gets into engine, because usually when you try and uniformly scale, while it can be good, it can also throw things out of alignment. It can stretch textures and whatnot. So I like to try and get this thing, try and be as accurate as possible ahead of time. From there, I begin the import/collision process. It's very simple. I split everything off that I created using the layer manager, and I break things down according to collision and the static meshes, and I make sure that any collision that I do make winds up in the collision part of the layer manager. I like to stay organized, so that way, if need be, I have to go back to 3ds Max in order to mess with the static mesh. I don't have to pull apart. I don't have to try and find each and every single piece. Instead, it's just one single layer that I can remove and just immediately jump into the static mesh. After importing everything into the desired engine, I immediately jump into Kismet and lighting. I try and do this before my final test so that way I can get the full package. Before, the block test was simply just to get the scale and the flow of the level, but now the level's complete, and I want to make sure that there isn't too much visual noise, and all the elements finally put together aren't going to collide to get aren't going to be messed up. And a lot of times, the levels that I create will have something other than just static meshes. It'll have game mechanics. It'll have doors and lifts and elevators and whatnot. And these are very important to the process to get out immediately. If an elevator moves too fast or a door doesn't respond very well, trying to get water effects to work properly. A lot of people ignore these kind of things and just kind of go straight into the visual aspects of the levels. A lot of levels are here's a locale, kill each other in it. While granted the players are still killing each other in it, I like to try and make sure that none of these elements are colliding and that I try and offer an experience rather than just a place, an arena to kill people in. Finally, the last two parts of the process here is the final test and packaging. The final test is a very important process, of course, before packaging, but I like to test as soon as possible. As you see, I have the block test immediately, but I'd like to make sure that my players are not only that my playtesters aren't only just playing it and trying to give me feedback, but I try and see the unspoken words. I try and see their reactions. I write down my observations. Do they lean when they're being attacked? Do they uh, try and duck down when the character's trying to crouch or anything like that? These kind of things are important. It means that the player's being engaged, and I like to pay extra close attention to it. But if a player's too stagnant or they're just sitting there not really getting involved, but saying, "Oh, okay, the here's this part. I have to do this. I have to do that." Okay, and just kind of itemizing it. Some players are like that, but I just like to try and push my players and try and get them mentally and physically worried about what is going on, what's happening to them. It means that they're invested. And finally, I package it after uh, the final test is done. And oftentimes, the final test is where I'll go back and say, "Oh, okay, well, here's a collision issue. Let me jump into 3ds Max and fix the collision," or I'll try and fix a kismet or a lighting situation, depending on the feedback. Sky Outpost was actually the culmination of several different level ideas. Originally, I had the idea of fighting on a high location, which would threaten the players with falling to their death. I found, though, it was missing something, an element of strategy beyond here's a location, go kill people in it. That was when I remembered another level of mine called Quintessence, a Unreal Tournament 3 warfare level that was based in a science lab. It was good, but it didn't have any edge of danger, so I decided to mix it up and combine the two concepts together. Enter the Sky Outpost. Combining the dangers of falling to your death and the tactical heavy nature of a warfare map, from the start this was a very testing exhaustive map, going through around 7 different iterations to the design and the structure of events. I finally settled on this version with the goal of having the center being the main control point, where there is still the main threat of falling to one's death. Each control point is visible from nearly every corner of the map, but I created the tower structure to prevent the sniping of control points while creating a limited attack range, so the point can still be saved by the opposite team. I created several points where the teams can easily turn the tide of battle. The map was created for there to be a constant danger to the players, while facilitating their ability to create viable strategies. And that is how I created the Sky Outpost level. If you have any questions or would like me to send you a copy of the level, you can contact me at beawesome@bobby-awesome.net. And be sure to visit my website, bobby-awesome.net. Thank you very much.